first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the labels from the cans. Make sure your cans are cleaned and dried. That will make a big difference in the Dremel going through it and not getting juices from whatever you had in there all over the place. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the large can, the chicken stock can, and I'm going to take it over to the drill press, and I'm going to drill a bunch of holes in the bottom of it. After that, I'll remove it later on, but having the lid intact helps with the integrity and the strength of the can, so when I go to drill some holes in the side of it and make some cuts in the side of it, it'll still be strong. So we're going to leave that in there for right now, but we're going to take it over the drill press and punch a bunch of holes in it. Okay, we've got a small bit. It's about, I want to say 3/64 to 1/8. And essentially you're just going to punch a bunch of holes in there. You can do this with a nail and a hammer. That's okay too. Okay, about got her done here. There's not a specific number of holes that needs to be in there. But if you get it somewhat like that, where it's just a fine mesh, then the air will be able to come out just fine. And at some point we're going to take this off and put it on the belt sander and sand down over. Okay, now from the perforated end, we're going to go from there 4 1/8 inch, and in this particular can, it's across the main rib and then at the peak of the next rib, but it's right at 4 1/8 inches. I'm going to put my mark there, and I'm going to take my Dremel and cut around the can. Okay, safety first. Goggles on. Now we got that trimmed off. Now we're going to take the can to the belt sander and smooth off the sharp edges. Okay, now we're going to take a little bit of sandpaper and run around the inside of that rim, because even though that belt sander does a good job on the outside, the inside you're still going to get a lot of burrs, and the last thing you need is a piece of metal jabbing in your finger. Okay, now you've got your chicken stock can with the bottom of it perforated, and keep in mind this is going to be raised up about a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to take the smaller can, the tomato can, and drop it into the chicken stock can. And I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to draw a line right there. And from that point, I'm going to make sure that I cut on the lower side of it because of that 1/2 inch rise. We all are going to have a little bit of a lip with it, but we're also going to have that rise. So we're going to just take it off the bottom of the lower line of the Sharpie, and it looks like it's real close to that first indent. So I'm probably just going to use that as a guide rather than taking it all the way around. I'll probably just use my Sharpie. And then we'll cut this. Okay, now I've got my painter's tape and it's wrapped out around the chicken stock can until it's all the way around. And from that point, I'm going to mark on there. And I'm going to remove that. put my tape measure up to it to measure the circumference of the can. In this case, it's right at 13 inches. So I'm going to use that 13 inches and divide it by 3 because this is a tri-support interlocking system. So we'll divide it by 3 and then we'll make our marks and our cuts into our can for our interlocking system. Okay, now I've got my tape back on and my marks there. As you can see, the can has a seam, and I'm going to use that for an alignment tool so that when the stove is hot, you can make sure that it's perfectly aligned. Because sometimes when you're doing this, although it means to be equidistant, it isn't always the case. So I'm going to cut down about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to cut just a little bit further outside so that when we go to assemble it, we'll twist it and it'll lock. Okay, now when you're finished, you can go ahead and remove your tape, and as you can see, it's got a notch for the interlocking piece and then a little bit of a locking tab, and that'll help secure the top half. Okay, now I've got my tomato can marked, and rather than cut it, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill a series of holes in both the extension can and the lower can, and I'm going to leave these lids intact to give the can some strength while I do that. They're going to be 1/4 inch holes, and there's going to be a couple 1/2 inch holes. So we're going to take it over the drill press, and we'll come back when the holes are drilled. Okay, and after drilling the holes, I'm going to take the Dremel and put a cone bit on there just to grind off the burrs, because those things are really sharp, especially if you run it through a drill press. It'll really kick up the fragments there. And I'll even take it on the inside of the can and knock down the burrs, and I'll take some sandpaper in addition to that. Once I've got those knocked off, I'll take a screwdriver and just kind of manipulate the holes to where they kind of flare out a little bit, and that'll give that wood stove gasifier effect to a certain extent. I don't think you ever get it 100%, but it'll get somewhat of a air coming down here, and then like a secondary burst of air to burn supposedly a cleaner burn. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's part of the Penny wood stove, and again, this stove has worked for a long time for me. Okay, now once again I've run the painter's tape around the circumference of the smaller can, and I've marked both the bottom and the upper layer, and that'll give us a measurement, and we'll divide that number by 3, and we'll have 3 supports on the top, and that'll also give us an alignment for our 3 tabs that we'll be putting into this interlocking stove here. And here I've marked with the Sharpie about 1/4 inch on the right side and also on the left side of the center line, and that'll be the width of at the top of the support. I'll take it down at an angle so it'll be much wider when it drops down here, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And from that point there, then we're going to take with our rotary tool, and we're going to cut along our bottom line, and then we'll start to form our tabs and also draw our outline for our upper fire vent. Okay, what I've done is with a Sharpie mark the upright supports at an angle. The distance on the top is about 1/2 inch apart, and it's about 1.5 inches apart at the bottom. This measures 2 inches from the top, which gives a good optimum burn, allows the wood flame to oxygenate and hopefully burn a little cleaner on your pots and pans. So I'm going to cut out this section here thrice, and then we'll have the upper part of the stove almost done. Okay, when the cutting is done, you'll have 3 sections that'll come out of the can, and that'll provide a really nice and strong pot support. Also nice and smooth. You're not going to have burrs in it, and it's very stable. It also gives plenty of room for the wood to gasify, and also provides the optimum distance on the penny alcohol stove from the bottom of the pot and pan. So it's a real nice integrated system. From there, I'm going to take and on my marks, I'm going to cut along this line here, and then we're going to start on our tabs, and then we'll have our finished stove. Okay, now I've got the tabs cut and bent. I just take them back and I bend them back with a needle nose pliers. And happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds that we